أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. All praise is due to God, Lord of the universe, and may God's peace and blessings be upon all of His prophets and messengers, including His final and beloved messenger, the seal of the Prophet Muhammad, and his purified household and righteous companions. God states in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in the messenger of God, you have an excellent role model. Amanna billah, sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. The Islamic month of Rabi'ul Awwal is a significant month in the Islamic calendar for many reasons. But perhaps one of the most important, or the most important reason why this month is significant is because it is during this month that we celebrate the birth anniversary of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family. It was during this month that the light of the Prophet Muhammad it was during this month that the light of the Prophet Muhammad entered into this world and illuminated this world. And as we celebrate, as many Muslim communities all around the world, we celebrate the birth of the Holy Prophet during this month, I think that it's important for us to take some time for us to really think about the life and legacy of the Holy Prophet. What the Prophet means to us as Muslims all around the world. For we know that the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family is significant to all Muslims, not only as the Prophet of Islam, but also as the role model for all Muslims. In fact, this is how the Quran describes the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family. God says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. In the messenger of God, there is a great exemplar, a great role model for you, O believers. And so it's important for us to think and to spend some time contemplating what does it mean for the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family to be a role model for us. And how can we learn from the life and legacy of the Prophet? What are the lessons that we can learn and apply from the life of the Prophet, from the mannerisms of the Prophet in our own lives today, 1400 years later? One of the important aspects of the life of the Prophet is his ethics, his ethical character. God describes the Prophet and his ethics in the Quran. He says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Indeed, you are, O Prophet, O Messenger, of sublime moral character. The Prophet had great character, and it is this aspect of his life that, first and foremost, it is important for us to emulate, because the Prophet himself says, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. That the main reason why God sent me is so that I can help people perfect the nobility of their character, to make them better when it comes to their ethical and their moral character and their attributes. And when we come to the ethicists, the scholars of ethics, they tell us that there's a major difference between two terms that often they entail some sort of ethical action and ethical being. In Arabic, one is adab and the other is akhlaq. We are told that adab, it refers to the outer manners and the outer etiquette that we are expected to display. Whereas akhlaq not only refers to the outer expression of these manners or etiquette, but also when the inner disposition of a person and one's outer actions and one's outer manners, when they conform to one another, when they match with one another. Thus, sometimes we find that some people, perhaps they may display certain adab, they may display certain external manner or etiquette, but their inner disposition may not necessarily match their outer disposition or their outer actions. Whereas when we come to akhlaq, the basis of which is that our outer actions and our inner dispositions, they match. And the Prophet says, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, not just so I teach people how to act externally, outwardly, but also to refine their character, their inner disposition, so that their inner disposition and their outer actions, they match with one another. And when we look at the life of the Prophet, we find that the Prophet was truly sublime in his character. He was consistently a man of sublime character. Nothing swayed him. His position in society, the money that he had, the place that he had in society, the strength that he had, none of this changed. Because when we look at the life of the Prophet, we find that the Prophet, even before he became a messenger, that he lived a life of poverty, and even in fact afterwards, that he lived a life of poverty, that he was not one who was egotistical. And this did not change. The Prophet's akhlaq, his manners, his ethics, his inner disposition, his sublime morals, it did not change from before he had access to wealth to after he had access to wealth. It did not change him. From before he had leadership in society and after he had maintained leadership. From before he had power to after he had acquired power. Nothing changed him. He always maintained his sublime character. And this is the essence of what it means to have morals and ethics. It is that one's inner disposition matches one's external attributes or external actions, and that nothing changes. And the reason for this, dear friends, is because first and foremost, the Prophet was true with himself. He was able to maintain such sublime character because he was truthful with himself. History tells us that long before the Prophet began his mission, long before he received his first revelation at the age of 40, that he had acquired two epithets, that people in society knew him as As-Sadiq al-Amin, the truthful and the trustworthy one, and that he had adopted these titles long before he actually began his prophetic mission. And these are the most important elements of a refined ethical character, that one is truthful and that one is trustworthy. And this is why we find that the sixth Imam of Ahlul Bayt, Al-Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, peace be upon him, when he describes the way to identify whether a person is truly honest, whether a person is truly devout, truly pious, the Imam says, do not be fooled by the amount of prayers or prostrations or cycles of prayer that a person performs, nor the amount of fasts that they observe. لا تغتروا بصلاتهم ولا بصيامهم. If you want to test the true character of a person, he says, ولكن اختبروهم عند صدق الحديث وأداء الأمانة. test people when it comes to their honesty in speech, and when it comes to the way that they fulfill their promises. In other words, test them when it comes to their honesty, their truthfulness. Test them when it comes to their trustworthiness, because it is these characteristics that are the basis of a refined moral character. We find that truthfulness, as-sidq, honesty, integrity, is the basis of a healthy soul and mind. Al-Imam al-Baqir, the fifth Imam of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, when it comes to honesty, he says, تَعَلَّمُوا الصِّدْقَ قَبْلَ الْحَدِيثِ. Learn honesty. Learn truthfulness before you even learn how to speak. Very beautiful. Meaning that our speech should always be based on honesty. We should never utter a sound. We should never utter a phrase or a word unless what we utter, what we speak is honest. Unless what we say is truthful. And this begins with oneself. We develop truth and honesty when first and foremost we are truthful and we are honest with ourselves. Because sometimes we find that there are some people who are able to deceive others with their speech, with their words, with the things that they say. And we may be able to deceive others around us, but we can never deceive ourselves. We can never lie to ourselves. I read a humorous story once that said that a man, he had a job interview. And so he went into the firm, and as the manager was interviewing him, he asked him several questions, and then he told him, listen, there are two things that are prized in this company. They are the two most important things that we expect everyone, every employee, everyone who is part of this company to have. Told him the first is cleanliness. We expect everyone to be absolutely clean, to be immaculate, to keep the place entirely clean, to clean up after yourself, to be looking clean, and so on and so forth. And this is why we expect everyone, we've placed mats in the entrances of the company, and we expect everyone to wipe their feet before they enter. So did you wipe your feet before you entered? The man said, yes, of course I did. The manager turned to him, he said, this is the first. Excellent. The first characteristic is cleanliness. The second characteristic is truth. We expect everyone to be absolutely honest. And I just wanted to let you know that we have no mats in the entrances of our company. We can deceive others, but we can never deceive ourselves. And the basis of a strong moral character is that we are honest, and we begin honesty with ourselves. Honesty may not result in perfection, but it results in genuine peace. What you see is what you get. According to the hadith by Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says that honesty and truthfulness will protect you even when you fear it, while dishonesty, falsehood, it will betray you even if you have hope in it. Dishonesty might save us in the short term, but in the long term, dishonesty always betrays us. Honesty might bring us fear and difficulty in the short term, but it will always save us in the long term. And this is why it's always important for us to be honest with ourselves and with others around us. Again, honesty may not bring about perfection, but it brings about genuineness, integrity. One is real when one is honest. Whereas lying and dishonesty and deceit is the root of all evil. There's a story mentioned from the time of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, where a man came to him and he told him, "O Prophet, I have a problem with performing all sorts of indecent acts, and I need your help. I need you to help me in order to avoid doing so. So what should I do?" The Prophet told him simply, "Do not lie." So the man was confused. He was asking the Prophet about these major immoral acts that he would engage in, and the Prophet's remedy to this was to tell him not to lie. So the man left. That evening, he got the urge to engage in some indecent behavior. But at that moment, suddenly, he recalled that the next day he would be seeing the Prophet again. And what if the Prophet were to ask him what he did the night before? What would he say? Would he lie? Would he engage in that act and then lie? Or would he tell the truth? And at that moment he realized that when it came, the best way to stop oneself from engaging in all sorts of indecent acts is to be honest. Is to be honest with oneself. And we find that dishonesty is a sort of unnatural state for human beings. This is why when we examine, when we observe young children, we'll find that young children are always honest. They're always honest. They don't know how to lie. They don't know how to be dishonest and to deceive others. It's only something that is acquired when they see others being dishonest. They grow up and they see that there's dishonesty and deceit around them. They learn this, but it goes against the natural state of a human being. This is why we find, even when it comes to lying detectors, why do lying detectors work so well? Because lying detectors, they detect changes in one's body, one's physiology. And it is these changes that show that one is lying. Because we become nervous when we're lying, when we are being dishonest. It goes against our natural state. We become nervous, and so this becomes evident. Whereas honesty, truthfulness, integrity is the natural state of a human being. So the first of these characteristics that the Prophet had acquired and that is important for us to also emulate is truthfulness, is honesty. And the second is trustworthiness. We said as-sadiq, he is known as as-sadiq, the truthful, and al-amin, the trustworthy. And in fact, trustworthiness is something that we find in all aspects of the Prophet's life. There's a famous story that during the time of the Prophet, the black stone was to be placed back in its place in the Kaaba. The Kaaba was being refurbished, rebuilt, and so the black stone was to be put back in its place. And the main tribes, there were 4 main tribes within Quraysh in Mecca at the time. And so there was conflict between them as to who would have the honor, who among them would have the honor of placing the black stone in the Kaaba, back in its rightful place. And so the chiefs of these tribes, they were in conflict with one another. A person who was there present, he suggested that the way to remedy this conflict was to wait to see who would enter the what is known as Masjid al-Haram, the sanctuary surrounding the Kaaba, and the first person who were to enter would be given the honor of placing the black stone in its rightful place. We are told that at this moment, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he entered, he came, he proceeded towards the Kaaba, and so they began to call out, Ja al-Amin, Ja al-Amin, the trustworthy one has come, the trustworthy one has come. And the Prophet, he entered, and they told him to place the black stone back in its place. So the Prophet, he asked that the black stone be placed on a piece of cloth, and that the chief of every tribe were to pick up one side, one corner of the cloth, and raise it together. And the Prophet, he carried the black stone and he placed it back in its place. The Prophet was known to be trustworthy to the extent that even his enemies, they would trust him with their material belongings. Even his enemies. When people would ask who to keep their belongings and their possessions and their trust with, they would be pointed in the direction of the Prophet, peace be upon him. This was long before he began his prophetic mission, before he began the revelations began, and he began his preaching and teaching. He was known as being trustworthy. And in fact, we find that this characteristic, trustworthiness, goes hand in hand with that of truth. Truth and trustworthiness go together, just as dishonesty, falsehood, and deceit, falsehood and betrayal and distrust go together. When we come to the Quran, we find that the Quran emphasizes the importance of maintaining our trusts, that we develop trustworthiness and integrity in our lives. In Surah Al-Mu'minun, God gives several characteristics of the successful believers. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. The believers are successful, and then God gives several characteristics of those who are successful believers. God says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. Those who, when it comes to their trusts, when it comes to their promises and their vows, they fulfill them. They do not betray their trusts. They do not break their promises. Rather, they ensure that they fulfill their trusts and their promises. They safeguard both material and moral trusts. When it comes to material trusts, sometimes we find that people, they trust us with money, with possessions, with other materials. It is important that we fulfill these trusts, that we do not betray these trusts. Sometimes we find that people entrust us with moral trusts, with secrets, with private information. It's important that we do not betray those trusts. Again, the basis of a strong character is that one is trustworthy, that one is truthful, that one has integrity. It comes before everything and anything else. I remember reading a story about a young man who wanted to learn the great name of God, Ismullah al-A'zam, which we are told unlocks the secrets of the universe. And so he went around traveling extensively to find someone who would be able to teach him the secrets of the universe. So he was told to go to a particular town, and there was a sage who would be able to help him. He goes there, he visits the sage, and he tells him, I've spent many years going around traveling looking for someone who can teach me Ismullah al-A'zam, the great name of God, and I was pointed in your direction. So I ask you to help me, teach me. I want to unlock the secrets of this universe. So the sage told him, yes, I'm happy to help you. But before I do that, I need for you to do something very important for me. I need for you to deliver a package to a friend of mine. And once you deliver the package to this friend of mine, then come back to me and I will teach you what you want to learn. And so the sage gives the young man, a package, and he tells him, under no condition are you to open this package. I want you to deliver it as it is. So the young man takes the package and he proceeds to where he's supposed to go. And we are told that part of his journey he had to cross a small river. So he sat in the boat, and as he's rowing on the boat, suddenly he noticed that there was movement in the package, in the box that he was given. So he ignored it at first, but then it began to move more. He became very curious. So he said, you know what, let me just take a peek and see what's in this box. So he opened the top of the box. As he opened it, suddenly a mouse jumped out of the box. He jumped out of the box onto the boat, and then out of the boat into the water. And the young man was not able to grab the mouse. He lost the mouse. So he continued on his journey. He arrived to the home of the person who he was directed to, and he told him that the sage has sent me to you with this package, and here it is, I'm delivering it to you. So the man, he asked him, he told him, are you delivering this package to me the way that the sage gave it to you? He said, yes. He said, are you sure? The young man stopped for a moment, and then he admitted, he said, you know, I became curious and I opened the box. And when I opened the box, the mouse jumped out, and so I lost the mouse. The man turned to him and he told him, you had gone to the sage and asked the sage to teach you the greatest name of God that would unlock all of the secrets of the universe. You wanted the sage to entrust you with this great tool, with this great power, yet you could not fulfill a simple trust. You could not be trusted even with a small mouse. Trustworthiness, integrity, truthfulness is the basis, dear friends, of our moral character. And this is why the Prophet, peace be upon him, long before he started his prophetic mission, he was known as As-Sadiq al-Amin. It is through these characteristics that people were attracted to the Prophet. That is, they accepted his mission because they knew that he was not one to deceive others. He was not one to lie to others. He was one that could be counted on in order to maintain trust. He did not deceive others. He did not betray their trust. And so this strengthened his position. It strengthened people's trust in him. And so they came to him and they accepted his mission and they began to follow him. And this is the first of those characteristics and those attributes that we are expected to adopt in our lives as followers of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, as those who love the Prophet, as those who wish to emulate the Prophet. It is important for us to secure these characteristics, these attributes in our own lives, to assist our children, our family members, our friends, those around us, to also be honest in their interactions, in their statements, that we teach one another trustworthiness. Unfortunately, now we live in a time of a lot of dishonesty. We live in a time of disinformation. We live in a time of fake news. We live in a time where politicians and leaders, they are too happy and they easily adopt all sorts of deceitful manners in the way that they interact. They lie left and right. They deceive people left and right. This is not what it means to be a leader. A true leader is one who is honest. A great member of society is one who is trustworthy. And so it's important for us to rebuild these characteristics in our lives and to help others build them in their lives. We will continue our series regarding the ethics of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family in the next few weeks. I pray that you are all safe and healthy, and I hope that you will continue to join us on this journey. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين